Hello, everybody. I'm John Garcia.
And I'm Steve Edwards, and we are
Weeding Through the BS.
We are excited to be back in the studio. For all of you, see, we got a new little background here. So John just put up a background, had a little fun with this, but big shout out to our sponsor, Cindy over at Media, the Owl app, leadership books, and everything that they do over there. I know they're excited.
Yes.
Right? They gave me a date. My book's going to come out in January.
Oh, wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, January is when they say the book's going to come out. So
Awesome.
so that's exciting. But
Weeding Through the BS for startups. How did we?
yeah, we're still it's a working title.
Yeah.
Right. But now it's just kind of getting all the fun stuff together.
Nice. Congrats. That's great.
Thank you. We're excited about that book, but I'm excited today. I've known Walter for a while now. I've seen Walter speak multiple times, but this week, John, so I don't even know if you know this, Walter was just now named for NAWDP the Workforce Professional of the Year.
Wow. Okay.
So excited for him to put his busy schedule to spend a little bit of time with us. Walter, thank you for being on Weeding Through the BS. Tell us a little bit about, who Walter is, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on the podcast. I am Walter Simmons. I serve as the executive director of the Prince George's County Workforce Development Board, along with the president and CEO of Employed Prince George's. And then I sit on a lot of boards. I thank you for the acknowledgement of receiving Workforce Development Professional of the Year from the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. I actually I've been volunteering on that board for several years, serve as the vice chair. I'm on the board for the National Association of Workforce Boards, the Maryland Workforce Association Board, the Maryland Nonprofits Board. So I'm on all the boards, but it's all about really my whole career, the last 15 years, has been focused on being an economic equity officer. I want to make sure that people across businesses, job seekers, youth, young adults, old people, immigrants, refugees, all have equitable access to their piece of the American dream, their piece of the American pie. So I've been doing that for the past 15 years from South Carolina along the East Coast, across the country.
That's Ghost Breath right there, right?
Yeah,
he wants everybody to get a piece of the pie, right? That is amazing. And you don't know this, John, but I've watched Walter speak and just he's amazing, right? So Walter, I'm gonna bring this up, right? Yeah. Is one of your sessions that I saw you were kind of the keynote at the end. It was in Maryland, Raising the Bar conference, and he's up there, and it's just you could just see right the energy in the room with Walter, and everybody knows
that vibe. Walter.
It's there. But you gave this thing, and I really want you to kind of talk about this: idea, plan, goal, strategy, and implementation. You didn't know that I listened. Woo! Right? I take notes on you, Walter. Tell me about that, because you explained that, and I was like, that is amazing.
That's the gold spot. All right, let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, everything is crazy till it becomes a reality, right? Sure. People used to think to get to California, you had to take a ship, you had to drive down the East Coast, go through the Panama Canal, go up through Mexico and come out the other side, and it took 30 days, right? People, it was crazy. So I always say that dreams can be a reality if you know how to do it. So dreams, ideas, goals, strategies, plans, reality, right? So you really, everybody can have a dream. The difference between really the people that are dreamers and people that are doers is the ability to convert that dream into an idea, right? Dream is when you go through that deepest state in your mind, in your sleep, in your mind, and your mind takes you to places that your current reality can't take you there, right? But what happens when you wake up? What happens when the lights cut on? That when you take that dream out of your head and you start talking to people and you feel comfortable about it, like when people talk about writing it on your mirror, on your bathroom mirror. I'm not writing anything on my bathroom mirror. I think that's weird as an adult. But it turns into an idea. All of us walk around with ideas. This podcast was an idea in your head before you told anybody, your significant other, your children, your colleagues, each of you, right? It was an idea. And then eventually when you felt comfortable and you're like, people are not gonna laugh at me, or I think I can do this, it turns into a goal, right? After you have that goal, you have to figure out like, all right, so how do I turn this goal and do it? It's like, well, you got to have different strategies. If you're going to lose weight, you got to say, hey, I got to stop eating McDonald's, or I got to stop hitting the Jack Daniels, or I got to stop eating, Cheesecake Factory, right? And then, okay, that sounds good, but then you got to actually have a plan, right? That means like, I'm gonna do my meal prep. I'm gonna hit the exercise bike. I'm gonna get up 30 minutes early and do it, right. So then you hit it, right? And then you turn that plan, and then everything that you day in and day out, right? Day in and day out, you wake up, you gotta eat that. You see that you want to get this food over here. Somebody wants to invite you, be like, hey, I got a dream. I want to be skinny, I want to lose 50 pounds. I want to get 2 abs, you know what I'm saying? And so it's everything that you got to do day in and day out to turn that dream into reality. And one of the big things that I just really been pushed on, I didn't know how to be a CEO until I was a CEO. I never ran a nonprofit until I had a nonprofit. But I knew I had a dream, and I knew I was willing to do those steps, and I knew every day I was willing to put in the work to turn that dream into reality. And I founded EPG on June 4th, 2018, with a $500,000 loan from Prince George's County government and a $250,000 grant and the ability to access the WIOA funds. We started with 30 staff and $5 or $6 million. Today, we're a $24 million nonprofit with 100+ staff. That's just the idea of turning the dream to a reality and willing to put in that work. And so, but it's anybody can do it. It's possible, right? We just have to be able to push each other and do it. So that's what it is to turn your dream into a reality, and breaking it down into those steps and having that commitment. I really believe anybody can do anything that's possible. That's relatively possible if they're willing to put in the work.
I love it.
Yeah, I talk
Timely.
about that a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's you make a decision every day to wake up. Are you going to do the right thing, the wrong thing, right? Are you going to make something happen? I always said, are you going to make somebody else rich or make yourself, right? It's going after your dreams and really, like when you talked about that at the conference, I was like, that's strong.
Yeah, I think it was Denzel, right? It says a dream without a goal is just a dream. You got to have the goal, you got to have the steps.
Yeah. So how did you talked about being kind of an economic equity officer, but how did you get into workforce development and that whole industry?
Well, I mean, my mother's in workforce development. A lot of people say like I was born into it, but it really wasn't, right? Nobody sees people going to workforce board meeting and say, yeah, I want to do that when I grow up. Not really, right? Man, I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to jump out of planes and do stuff like that. I played college football and really got to the point where I was looking at federal law enforcement at a certain point. And then one day I had the realest thing happen to me. I started for a criminal justice major. I had to intern. I interned at the sheriff's department. And I just saw some of the craziest stuff that you'll ever see in your life. I saw a lot of poverty. The sheriff's office is who comes in and evicts people, is who takes kids away and escorts them out of households. And I just saw a lot of bad stuff. And then I really got on the journey of just being able to fix these socioeconomic issues. So I said, I don't want to work for the sheriff's department and arrest people or separate. Like, how can I prevent this? I started working for juvenile justice. And that really shined a light. I had a person, I tell the story all the time, and I'm gonna make it real short. I had a kid that I was working with, like 16, had been in jail for a very long time. And
I'm excited not to cut you off. I hope you're telling the story because this is in my notes to ask you to tell the story from Maryland. I hope this is the story.
Yeah, it is.
I think you're man. Yeah. This is it. Right.
Good.
And so I was a volunteer auxiliary. They call it auxiliary intensive supervision officer. Basically, if you were qualified and went through the training to be a intensive supervision officer in the state of South Carolina at that time, and you were willing to work for free, they would hire you. So I did it, and I wanted to, improve my community and met this kid, man. And and I was getting introduced to him from the other ISO that was an actual staff member working there. And they utilized me at 21 because I could relate. You know, I was only 4 or 5 years older, where a lot of these intensive supervision officers were in their 40s and 50s. And this kid was a model student, was getting ready to be released within 6 months, and he just went to another pod and beat up a complete stranger. Beat him down, didn't know him, different pod, no gang related. This was a perfect kid, had done everything he needed to do. And he wouldn't talk to anybody, shut down. When we would try to talk to him to figure out, he said, violate me. And violate means, when you're incarcerated, violate means violate their terms, which means you can extend their time or they might have to go back to court. But luckily, I had a good leader. I had a good manager for our county in Newberry County. Shout out to Newberry County Department of Juvenile Justice. She said, no, we can push the paperwork. Let's really understand what happened, because he's been in jail for 6 years. He's never had an issue. So finally meet with this kid, and he says, you know, and he really knocked us in our face. You know, we're like, oh, you did this great. You got your high school diploma, you can go to college. He was like, who gonna sign the loan? He was like, my mama gonna sign the loan. You know, and what you realize then, he knew that his mama probably had as much credit as he did in jail, that the likelihood of him getting a student loan wasn't happening. Then he said something that really like changed my life. He was like, oh, you want me to go home? You trying to release me? And he was like, in jail, I got food. He was like, I got clothes on my back. I got shoes on my feet. And then he hit you. He said, I got AC in the summer, heat in the winter. I got 3 meals and 2 snacks. Wow. And he was like, if you release me back home, can you guarantee I have that? Because from when I left, I didn't. And at that moment, you realize this guy is bragging about jail. He's bragging about them orange flip-flops. He's bragging about the white Bobo sneakers that we all joke about. He's bragging about 3 meals and 2 snacks. He's bragging about jail food, right? He's bragging about crackers. When he talks about the snack, he's talking about an apple and some peanut butter, right? He's talking about the little crackers that you get in a bag that you pay 75 cents on the machine. He beat somebody up to be able to have that. And at that moment, it hit me. And I said, at that moment, he hit me and I said, yo, this guy lives in the same state that I live in. He lives in a community that I'm familiar with. I got to dedicate my life so that kids don't have to choose jail, that jail is not a better option than home. And the next thing that really shined the light on when I say I'm an economic equity officer is that he looked back and he said, yeah, so after he said all that, he said, violate me. He said, and then he said, violate me. And he said, hopefully if you violate me, I get a year. And because what he realized was in the state of South Carolina, you can emancipate yourself at 17. And he was about like 7 months away from his 17th birthday, but 6 months away from being released. So he needed to be released at 17 so he could emancipate himself. And then he said, yeah, if you release me at 17 and I emancipate myself, y'all have to find me housing and I can go into a transitional housing and then I can work and be able to provide those things. This man beat somebody up so that he could stay in jail, so that he could qualify for transitional housing, so that he would have the option to work where he wanted, because he lived in Newberry County is a rural area. He wanted to get moved to Columbia, the state capital, where he had access to transportation, where there was quality job opportunities, where there was resources. So a 16-year-old in jail figured out what city he needed to live in, where he could have equitable transportation, what area had the jobs he needed. And then he had to figure out, once he figured that out, he just had to figure out how to stay in jail 1 extra month. And that's what I said. I needed to create, my life changed at that moment where I knew right then I had to be somebody that created opportunities for people like him, because he didn't have equitable access. He was fighting to get equitable access. And I said, I got to make that job easier for every other young adult, every other person like him. And so I've been on a pathway ever since. My whole career has been like, I see a program that sucks, I'm gonna fix it. I see something that doesn't work, I'm gonna build it. I see something that doesn't exist, I'm gonna create it. I see people that need to be led to do something, I'll lead it. And that's what got me where I am today.
What did I tell you?
Yeah.
I mean, that is just
awesome, passionate story. And I'm sure obviously there's thousands more like that. You know, this one was obviously personal to you, but I'm sure that's a common, you know, you probably if you drill down, you probably see that situation a lot, unfortunately. And maybe they're not getting those kind of resources when they're, you know, in jail, as far as like what to actually do, right? So he's figuring it out on his own. And unfortunately, staying in jail was a better option short term for him. So Walter, you know, we like to weed through the BS here, and you're a super passionate guy. I just want to know what is really bothering you right now? What's frustrating you right now? What's the top, you know, thing that's just keeping you up at night that you want? Because you're a doer. You just mentioned how many things you're addressing. What are you tackling right now?
Man, the biggest things that keep me up at night, really especially from a workforce development standpoint, is our system. Man, our system is operating in these boxes, just these really confined boxes, and they're invisible boxes. They're boxes that don't exist. There's so much more that we could do. Yes, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act is restrictive. Yes, it has requirements, but there's so much that we could do. There's so many gray areas. And I think if we can, as a public workforce system in America, the 550 workforce boards, if we actually started just moving those elbows out a little bit more, pushing those arms out a little bit forward, just kicking the box to see if it's really a heavy box or not, we could be able to do so much more in our communities. Prince George's County, like many other counties, from 2019 to today, we lost 20,000 workers out of our system. We lost 14,000 jobs, right? What you did yesterday, you can't do today. Like they say, yesterday's price is not today's price, right? We have to change. We have to break these invisible boxes that are so restricting us and really figure out a way to see the grace, see the opportunity, and then run toward it. So that's one of the biggest things. The second thing is big out is look at the young adults getting in age of crime, right? They said something in Prince George's County through the first few months of this year. There's a carjacking or car stolen every 90 minutes in my county, right? But I want to say this though. I was an athlete student. I was not a student athlete, right? Athlete student.
Okay. Yeah.
We really got to figure out the education piece to engage these students and these young adults, because they're going to school like you. I was in school and they were teaching me about physics and they were teaching about science. And they're like, you know, if you hit these two rocks together, they'll create another rock. And I was just like, so what? Like, I don't care about these rocks. And when you go into school, and to be honest, I was a kid that were like, you know, I would be like, tell me how I can use this in real life. Listen, I have never, the Adams chart, you know, the whatever they call it, I have never used that in life. Like, I felt like, give me, like Maxine Waters, I want to reclaim my time learning about the nucleus and all of this. I've never used it. That's why these kids aren't going to school. That's why they're out in the street. That's why they're trying to get money. When are we going to change the school to talk about buying a home, entrepreneurship? You realize how much attendance would go up if we started teaching people how to make $1 million? Like the business behind social media. How do you become an influencer? How do you turn 10,000 followers on YouTube into $10,000? When are we going to change the system to really start talking about the real world? That's the second thing that's really bothering me. And just like
it's the real world. Let's go.
Like weeding through the BS. Like, listen, throw this curriculum out. It's not working. It's not working.
Not working. Yeah.
Like, let's be real. Listen, how many of you all? How many? Like, listen, y'all tell me. Y'all went to school. Do you know your molecular chart? Are you using that in your house right now? Are you blending
chart of something or other?
No. Yeah, and if you're blending chemicals together, it's probably something you don't want to talk about in public anyway. You probably shouldn't be doing it.
It's Walter. It's crazy what you're saying right here. It's so passionate. Actually, one of our guests that's coming on later this week has an academy that it's not homeschooling, it's not charter, but they teach here's the real world. So everything that you're talking about, he just said that. I was on his podcast a month ago and he talked about it. So it's interesting. I'll send you that link because he talks about it. It's like, why are you going to use the periodic table? Here's the real life, right?
Here's the real table.
Know how to balance a checkbook, how to see. I saw this thing the other day, and I pulled it up again, and it says right now, 1 in 4 kids now want to be an influencer. And it says 86% of people between 13 and 38 are willing to try out influencing. They want to be influencers.
Yeah.
Right. Why? Because we live in that world and now they think, oh, You know,
They do, and they see it, but I think we have an insecure also generation. Like like we used to, like Walter said, I wasn't a CEO until I was a CEO. I wasn't in nonprofit, but I think kids today have a little bit more fear of just doing it and getting started. And I also think they're intimidated by seeing other people that are successful on social media, and it's like, oh my God, I'll never be like this person.
Right.
So I do think, yeah, I mean, you know, imagine if a school really taught, I mean, that's marketing in today's world, right? It's really
bank accounts.
Yeah. Oh my
right.
God.
All
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah.
Like Walter, I think you touched on something, and I think more parents need to kind of help their kids, and the education system needs to help the kids. But so many people will, and I see it with my kids at the school on the Facebook group, like people will say something and they like think that they're just going to, oh, I'm going to send my kid to school and the school's going to do everything. They got to have a support group around them as well.
Mhm.
You know, we're doing a podcast for a nonprofit here that is, he helps inner city youths, and he helps them with basketball and chess, right? Which is very interesting because we play chess one day, we play basketball the next day, and he's really
That's
helping
cool.
them in, and he's trying to get this into the inner city. And we're excited because we get to, you know, we're hosting the podcast for their big charity event and stuff like that. So Walter, I think you're spot on. I want to ask you this, right? You kind of touched on it a little bit. What do you think with, you know, workforce development, economic development, you know, how could other people be more like you? Because, you know, you are one, like you talked about, kicking the box, doing stuff, but so many other people seem to, here's what's always been done, I want to do it the same way. But you seem to go out. How can other people be more like Walter? Like, what do they need to do out there?
You never say no immediately. I mean, I get 250 emails a day, and I'm always, you know, reading, entertaining, and learning. So never say no immediately. Number two is Google Alerts. Like, man, I Google Alert economic development, workforce development, grant, and I don't have time to read a lot. Like, I don't read a lot of books, but I probably read 50 to 70 articles a week. Just going through data and mining it. And three, I would say trying to be, just always focus on be a better leader. I always say, right, so never say no immediately. Staying current on events. Always trying to be a better leader. I always say this: the three things that make me the leader that I am, I would say, is the ability to say this: I don't know, the ability to say I am wrong, and the ability to say I need help. So never saying no, staying current on never saying no immediately, staying current on events, and being able to say I don't know, I am wrong, and I need help. Because like I reached out to our guy Jaime Cruz out in Vegas, and I saw a Google alert that he had created this program to incentivize businesses and help them reopen. I just called him and I said, hey, you don't know me from a can of paint, but I do the same job you do in Maryland, and you seem like you're doing it way better than me. Can you help me? He said, yeah, let's set up a meeting. I took Jaime's program and what he did, I think he got a $500,000 grant, $300,000 grant. I created a similar program in Maryland, tweaked it, and was able to raise $12 million from it, right? Oh. And I tell people all the time, they say, where'd you get this idea from, Jaime Cruz in Vegas? How did you find out about it? Google Alerts. Well, how did you meet him? Google, called the number, said hello. He said hello back, and we started a friendship from there. So
wow,
those kind
of
things. I mean,
wow, about that.
Hey, I really don't think it's any different. I really think there's just the ability to, you know, create a plan and stick to it, and really just keep pushing, you know, and just keep figuring it out, you know. And I think that's something I love going to conferences. I love listening to new workforce professionals, and I love listening to older workforce professionals. I'm gonna try to find something from everybody and put it into my plan. And every day I wake up, right, and I say, like, you need to know what you don't know when you don't know you need to know. You need to know what you don't know when you don't know you need to know. And so every day I'm trying to know that thing that I didn't know. And my father taught me that from an entrepreneurship. And it's like, hey, you always got to be ahead of the curve. You got to know what the market wants before the market wants it, and know how they want to receive it. And so, I'm just hungry. I'm just, every day I wake up, and I don't think, you know, I say this, and I think it doesn't come from a good place, because the one thing that we have to do, especially as men, is understand our trauma. I wake up every day fearing to be homeless. I wake up every day thinking I'm gonna get fired and I'm the CEO. So what that does to me is every day I'm fighting not to be homeless. And every day I'm trying to prove to myself why I should keep my job. Because as you all know, when you're an entrepreneur and you're out here, you could just wake up and say, I don't feel like doing this today, right? And then that's a habit. Then you do it the next day, and then you do it the third day, then you do it the fourth day, and now you slowly. So every day I wake up saying, hey, every day I put my feet on the ground, say, I ain't gonna be homeless today. I'm gonna make sure I come back, and you ain't gonna fire me, Walt. You ain't gonna get rid of me.
So Steve,
And
your
so
answer
all
is
of those things.
Steve's answer is
just
no
go.
one is like Walter. I mean, Walter, I mean,
There's not.
and you know, just being hungry, like we could talk about generationally if you see that in this younger generation. But I want to just ask you real quick, would you say then your father was your mentor growing up? Like you mentioned he was an entrepreneur, because I do think having that influence growing up in the home is probably 1 in a million, right?
Man, we don't have time today. My father was my hero, man.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, we don't have time today. My father died the day that I got the funding approved to get EPG. So the one of the happiest days of my life was the day that I lost everything. So that was crazy for me. But my mother, my father, right? When I realized who my mother and father and my grandparents were, all of like, who's your hero? Who, you know, I like Batman, I like Michael Jordan. I was like, I like my mom and daddy. Like, do you know my mom and daddy? Like, you know, my mom was raised by 2 alcoholic parents. She raised herself. Her father never finished school, was dyslexic, dropped out of school in 3rd grade. Her mother dropped out of college when she had her sister, and she became one of the most successful people, a 2-time deputy assistant secretary of labor. My dad came from an abusive home, ran away at 14, worked on a migrant farm camp in the 1950s, right? Yeah. In Florida, took a bus to Florida from North Carolina, worked on a migrant farm camp where the people were being dead, they were mistreating them. You hear the stories that happens now. Imagine what it was 60 years ago. So he was 14 years old on a migrant farm camp, took a bus to New York, unfortunately got involved into the drug game, became a returning citizen, got incarcerated, spent 17 years in jail, came back again, and ended up having a 30-year career as a successful entrepreneur, as a owner and car salesman, right? And keep in mind, what was hanging out at the PGA Tour, talking to college professors and business owners and millionaires, and they realized just a dude he ran away from home at 14. He was a dropout, right? He got his GED in jail, and 40 years later, he's talking with CEOs, executives, and elected officials in his kitchen, and he's hosting them in his house for drinks on a Thursday. And this is a guy who worked on a migrant farm camp. Man, I'm gonna leave. I know you gotta go. My great-grandmother, right? My great-grandmother lived on the plantation that they were enslaved on. And one day in the 30s and 40s, she got up, right? And she was like, I'm gonna break the cycle. I'm not raising my kids, even though she was free. She was like, I'm not raising my kids on the plantation that we were enslaved on. And then she got a piece of land. She was a sharecropper, and she plowed it, right? She got it plowed. She worked with her community, and she removed all the cotton. And they planted potatoes and beans, because you know what she said? Not only I'm not gonna live on the plantation that we were enslaved on, we not picking cotton no more, right? You know, those people, those my heroes, man.
They set the bar high for you, Walter.
That is a true hero right there. And I mean, that goes back to, they had an idea, they planned it, they had a goal, they had a strategy, and they implemented it. They did it. So you know what? That what's in your head, right? When you talked about, we had an idea here, that was put into your head where you're at today because of what they did back then, right? Yeah. That's strong genes. And I think everybody out there, and you know, I say it, so many people have an option to do stuff. Some people say that they never had that. Sometimes you just have to step up and go out there. You know, obviously
nothing was handed to them. So,
and I'll say it's obviously, you know, what happened with me over the last couple of weeks, my family, but last night I did something. My 82-year-old father, I had to get on the phone with him because he hasn't paid a bill in 40 years. And I had to show him how to set up an automatic deposit. Wow. Right. So that was teaching somebody new that hasn't had to do anything, you know, and it's such a different, it was a different thing. He wasn't stepping out. I had to go in and step in, you know, to where that was like where my father, where I said to him last night, I joked, I go, Dad, you don't like people that are educated. You don't like technology, and you didn't love teachers. What your daughter-in-law is her master's, was a teacher. Your son runs a technology firm. and we're both educated.
And now he's
You
gonna
know?
have to figure out his
Now we're
online
working.
banking.
Yeah, now I got to teach him. Don't get into that. So,
Oh, boy.
Walter, the last question we have. I mean, just having you on, it's just, I love the inspiration, right? Every
Yep.
time you talk, I love listening to it. I love hearing it. I mean, I took a ton of notes just from you, right? Because I always believe, right? Iron sharpens iron, and I learn so much from you. Every time you talk, it's just exciting to be able to hear the motivation, the story behind everything. But we're gonna play our last little thing here.
Uh-oh.
You came in with no bullshit today,
Yeah.
but now I get to throw I get to let you give us some bullshit. So we're gonna play our game that we always do here. It's called the 2 Truths and a Lie. John is up on me right now by one.
This is good.
With an asterisk, but he's up on me. So we're gonna give us 2 statements. So 2 truths, 1 lie. We're gonna pick to see which one, to see if we know. And you told me you don't think that we're gonna know, so I'm excited. Let's hear it.
All right.
All right, I got one for you.
All right.
I swam with sharks. And while I was swimming with sharks the same week, I swam into a volcano. Number two,
Man.
I forgot that I had an appointment with the White House. I forgot I had an appointment with the White House, and I ended up just like that day, just Uber Eats and some food, right?
You blew up the president.
3,
All right, White House.
Yeah, I chose, I was looking at the president, I was looking at Uber Eats, and I was like, yeah, let me hit this Uber
Priorities.
Eats.
Yeah, all right, got you.
I heard the White House food isn't that good anyway. All right, and then, the last one is, but I did actually eventually get a chance to meet a U.S. president.
Nice.
Okay.
Name?
So that's the
Give us a
third
name.
one. That's
Who'd
the
you
third
meet?
one.
Is that the
Barack
third?
Obama.
Oh,
Okay.
Barack.
All right.
Was that the third one then? So you swam with sharks and somehow ended up in a volcano.
Yep.
You were a White House no-go.
Yep. Ditched the White House for Uber Eats.
And we met Barack.
So I got mine.
You sure?
I was gonna say the BS was the sharks, but then he added the volcano, and I'm like, man, no one makes that up. That's gotta be true.
So it's tough for me, right?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, Walter's very detailed, right? He's got an admin, his calendar is booked. He's not going to miss an appointment, but I think he's throwing me off, and I think he didn't want to meet the president, and I think he blew it off on purpose. So I'm going the BS is you forgot the appointment with the White House.
All right, I'm gonna say the BS is you met Barack, because I'm thinking you missed that appointment, so you probably didn't meet Barack that day or something. So his the BS is the White House. I say you didn't meet Barack. What's the real BS?
I did not meet Barack. I was in the same room, but I didn't actually meet him. I did. Hey, listen, I did miss the appointment event at the White House. I legit missed it.
Yeah,
I thought you were throwing me off there because of the I think into it too much, and I thought for sure
11-9.
where you're at, you would have met Barack.
Yeah, and I was scuba diving in Hawaii, and I like to scuba dive, and I looked down and I seen these big things that I was like, oh, those were sharks. But for at the end of the excursion, they was like, y'all want to go see something cool? And we was like, yeah. It was like, if you can hold your breath long enough, you can swim through that mountain right there. And it wasn't really a mountain, it was a volcano crater. And it was about 5 or 6 feet wide. If you could swim under it for 5 or 6 feet and hold your breath, when you came up, you were inside of an inactive volcano.
Yeah, once you added that part, I said that's true. Because you swim with the sharks, I was like, no, but then the volcano, I was like, all right, that seems like a true story.
Where was that in Hawaii?
Yeah, the Big Island.
The Big Island?
Yeah.
I like that. My wife has some family out there.
Oh, yeah?
We want to take our kids out there once they get a little bit older, and we'll see. So Walter, is there any last things you wanna say to us here at Weeding Through the BS or anything? You want to give out to any parting words?
Yeah, I'll say never let never let someone's aspirations limit yours. A lot of people would, you know, when you talk about a lot of the BS we go through, really is based on the people around us.
Yeah.
Somebody says you can't do something. Somebody says that's not possible. They're really saying that in reality because they can't see themselves doing it, or they can't see themselves achieving it. So never let someone's aspirations or goals limit yours. You know, you create your own, because a lot of times what they can't do or what they couldn't do, that's how they provide guidance for you. And that goes from family, friends, whoever. You gotta live your own life.
Amen, man.
That was
Thank
strong.
you. Awesome.
Walter, thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you on and speak to you. So thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week. So
hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
see you next week. Appreciate you all.
Walter, great to meet you.
All right, take
Thank
care,
you so
Walter.
much.
Have a great
Nice to
night.
meet you, brother. Y'all have a good one.
Take care.